Hi there, everyone. This is Poor Man 973, and it's June. Uh, June is, as everybody knows, Clara, don't do that. Father's Day. Um, is a holiday I don't celebrate anymore. Because not only have I lost my father, I've lost all my grandparents, my grandfathers. I still have two grandmothers, but so it's not a big holiday in our house anymore. Um, in fact, if you want to say hi to Dad, one of the last three pieces of him above ground, right there, he sits back there on my knick-knack shelf right in front of that top Pikachu. This is to talk about my dad. And first I want to get it out of the way that no matter what I say, please don't hate me for hating my dad, and don't hate my dad for being who he was. Because as much as I disliked the man, I loved him. So, please, that's all I ask, is please be respectful. Now I want to start with saying I could have had a way worse dad, way worse, and I know this. He didn't beat me. He didn't drink. He didn't do drugs or smoke or anything like that. So, in that respect, I got very lucky. I remember a couple times when I was young that he like kicked me in the rear end after I had done something wrong. Awfully hard, but nothing that left anything lasting. We'll start with kind of growing up with Dad. I actually didn't get to see Dad a lot for the first 10 years of my life. We lived in a town called Fairview in Utah, tiny little place in Sanpete County, and just after we moved out when I was 10 years old, Sanpete County got its very first traffic light. And it is I don't know if this is true anymore, but I had heard that it was the lowest spent on education in a county in the United States of America. Like I said, I don't know if that's totally true. It's just something I had heard. But anyway, my dad worked as a janitor at the Skyline Mine coal mine. And to get there, you would have to drive up this windy canyon road with near vertical cliffs down into a canyon below. It called Fairview Canyon, at least for a little bit, and until it changed canyons, in which I don't remember. But he worked up there at the Skyline Mine for a very long time as a janitor. And growing up, that's why I didn't get to see him. He would, first growing up, they had a bus that would gather the employees in Fairview and take them to the Skyline Mine, and Dad would drive. Eventually, because they stopped doing the bus. But I have memories of going down really, really early in the morning to see Dad off, and then Dad would come back home really late at night. So we didn't get to spend tons of time together, so the time that we did spend together, he really did try to interact with me and my sister. He would take us fishing to catch fish and crayfish, crawdads, mud puppies, whatever you want to call them. I call them crayfish or crawdads. And And we would work building things made out of wood, or at least I would pretend to, and Dad would actually do it well. He built us a tree house. It was more like a tree platform in this really big apple tree we had in the backyard. And it was pretty fun. He tried to put a ladder in, but it turned out to be easier just to climb because the tree was kind of hollowed out, and you just climb up to it. And eventually I hung a bucket from one of the limbs connected to a rope, and I would just haul myself up that way. I was quite active and quite strong as a kid. Boy, I wish I could feel like that again. But and Dad and we'd grow a small garden there. A lot of times pumpkins and peas, because that's pretty much the only thing that would still grow there. And so, and sometimes he'd even take, when he took us fishing, there was a lake that we went to called Schofield Lake that you had to drive past his work, and we could go in and get free hot chocolate. It wasn't very good hot chocolate, but we'd get some hot chocolate, and sometimes we would help Dad at work. Like, I remember once when he didn't force us to do this, we volunteered to mop the entrance. I'm sure Dad he just let us do it, and he had this office he shared with somebody else that was filled with cleaning stuff that he shared with another guy. I don't even know who he was. And it had a nice window that you could look out and see this big vein of coal on the side of the mountain. And I have lots of good memories. I remember one year, like, he would take us sledding sometimes. And he would take us up into the canyon to try to find a place to sled. Now, there's not a whole lot of good places to sled in the canyon because, as I said, cliff, on one side of the road. And I remember one place we went, and I think it was like an old a really steep dirt road or track or something that went up the side of the mountain. And we had this sled that you could, it was a wooden sled, the kind that you could pivot with your feet to make it turn. And what you had to do on that hill was, if you didn't do this before you stopped, was either you had to stick your feet out, and I don't know why I'm doing this when you guys can't see it, you had to stick your feet out and jam them into the snow to slow down to stop, or hit it so that it would turn into a jackknife, basically, and send you tumbling a couple feet. Because if you didn't, you'd go from hill, road, cliff. And then I remember one year he took us, and the snow was so deep, we tried sledding, and the only thing we got was stuck in the snow. And growing up, I didn't know my dad had a problem. And it was a very big problem, and it was a problem not of his own making. So like I said, he didn't do drugs, he didn't smoke, he didn't drink, he didn't abuse us, not really. There's a couple things I can picture in my head of him doing that he probably shouldn't have. But it was relatively okay. My dad had, and I'm probably not getting it right, and I'm probably not saying the whole thing, but it's basically spinal cerebral degeneration. Spine means your spine, his spinal cord, and cerebral mean his brain and his brain stem. And by degeneration, I mean it was to pour more so that most people will understand. It was rotting. It was dying. And this caused much more problems as I started getting older and more independent. And that's when I didn't hate him as a child. But growing up, I began to hate him. He is the reason why I know how to fish, and I hate fishing. He's the reason I don't like eating spaghetti or lasagna. And so many other things. I grew up fishing, loved fishing. As I got older, hate fishing. So when I was 10, Mom got a job here in Evanston, Wyoming, where I am living currently. And just after school ended, the 5th grade, we packed up and moved up to Evanston, and I remember the last couple of weeks very vividly, living with just Dad because Mom had already moved up. Um, we didn't have any gas in the house, so it was still June, so it was warm, but there was nothing to heat water. So we would have to have freezing cold baths or showers. Maybe if we had a bath, we could boil water on the stove and just put it in the cold water to warm it up just a little bit. Sorry, I keep going off, and I apologize. And by now, Dad has been basically declared disabled, and he's been told he can no longer work. He can no longer drive. This is mostly because his eyes, like, if you hold out a finger and you just look at that finger, you see one finger. Now imagine that you see, when you're looking at your finger, you're suddenly looking at another finger, and this one's doing this, and this one's doing that. He was more or less blind. Not blind in that he couldn't see, but blind that he couldn't get anything to say stay still. Still was able to get around. Was still able to fish and do all sorts of things. Heck, he was even able to hunt, but he wasn't allowed to drive. But unfortunately, this also started him being pretty mean and bitter, and mostly towards his family, including myself, my sister, and my mom. It started to become more and more a problem once I turned 15 and got my driver's permit, and I wasn't supposed to drive with him in the car because he wasn't a valid adult with a driver's license. And he did, unfortunately, convince me to do that a couple times. Even though I knew the law and I said I wouldn't do it. That would just make him mad and pout, and he's basically started to become a really upset baby who also happened to know that he's my father. So, basically like a baby in power kind of a thing. So he took me of learning how to drive as basically to drive him around everywhere. And at first I did it. I would take him fishing. And I would take him to the store. And I would take him down to the ice ponds. And eventually I got tired of it. And, at this point, I am a teenager. I'm growing up. And I don't want to do everything that Dad tells me. I'm tired of Dad bossing me around. Dad doesn't, and Dad ruins everything he touches. He jimmy rigged things that didn't need to be jimmy rigged, that were working perfectly fine, but not according to him. He would jimmy rig it. It would stop working, and then he would get mad and try to jimmy rig it again. I started telling him no. And he didn't take too kindly to his son telling him no. And I don't remember how old I was, but I was actually doing a live stream. It might actually still be up on the channel. I just don't know where it is. I got tired of him. I was doing a live stream, and this was, I believe, Christmas Eve. Yes, it was. It was Christmas Eve. And he told me something that I didn't want to do. And I told him to go jump off a bridge. And this is the second time he had done this. Not me telling him to go off a bridge. But he came in, grabbed me basically by my throat, and threatened to beat all the teeth out of my mouth. And so, Christmas Eve that year, it was starting to get dark. I threw on my coat, I am bawling out my eyes so I can't see. And I walked down to one of my favorite places to be in town, that being the Bear River State Park, where I intended to take off my jacket, lie down on a cold metal bench, and lay there until I froze. I had even considered just going jumping in the freezing river. And I mostly remember crying a lot. And it was getting really dark, and I was getting really cold. And I thought about my mom, about how she would wake up on Christmas morning and I wouldn't be there. And she would have found out that I would have died on Christmas. And honestly, I couldn't stand that. So I dug out my phone, put my jacket back on, and I called to become picked up. And I think that's honestly when I started to get suicidal. I was angry all the time. I was angry at Dad. A lot. It got so bad to the point that he would ask me something incredibly simple. If he said, "Hey Daniel, can you go grab my fishing pole from the living room?" I'd be mad. And half the time I wouldn't do it. And I would tell him no. Dad, because a lot of his issues, was having more trouble getting around. And at one point, my dad's side of the family has problems with necks, and I think I'm next in line, actually. One day, we find out his neck has been fused, literally fused together. And they said if he falls down, hits his head or anything like that, dead. And we got that taken care of. He had a big scar right here that you could really see once he started to lose just a little bit of weight, and he removed his beard. Besides being not supposed to drive, or being able to drive, didn't stop him from trying. I remember one day we was driving home, and just to see Dad, because we went out searching for him. So we was driving home about to give up, and we found Dad pulled over down the street from our house. And we had to, Clara, I really wish you wouldn't go there. We had to beg the police officer not to give him a ticket. I don't remember what happened after that. Dad never gave up fishing. He loved fishing very, very much. He loved to fish. If he could be doing something, he'd rather be fishing. And I think that's why I hate fishing so much. You know, as a kid, like a teenager, you only can take so much fishing if you're not really into that. Fish, and now my ignore that beep. Sorry, I don't know if I said this, but I am gonna ramble, and just talking. One year, my dad went to go visit his buddy Sam. He lives in Huntington, Utah. It's quite a drive from here. Well, Dad went out by himself in a boat. And I want to say this, that Dad couldn't swim. Remember how I said how his neck was all screwed up? We'll say he couldn't do this. Heck, he couldn't even really do this. Just kind of, at most, like, keep his arms down and use. Well, the boat flipped over. And it is still a very cold time of the year. Basically, I think the ice had just come off. And the only reason he didn't drown then, because he managed to grab hold of the side of the boat. Basically, like if this was the side of the boat, right? That basically he was clipped on by his fingernails, like that. And then had to wait for rescue. It's when my mom said some words that are very painful now. That one day a police officer is going to show up at my house and tell me that you have drowned. This wasn't his first time trying to drown himself. And I should say he's not doing it on purpose. I don't think the man was ever suicidal. To all of his friends, Dad was this wonderful guy. Happy, cheery, friendly. To his family, not as much. I think he saw us as something that could be yelled at. And I remember getting in many a fight with him. And as to his drowning, there was one day he went out and he fell down and started falling into a lake. And if his friend Bob wasn't there to save him, he would have fallen in the lake and probably drowned. One day he almost fell into the Bear River. One day he fell into a creek. Left behind a couple $1,000s worth of fishing equipment. And I'm talking about this is because he just... We'll get to that in a bit. Dad would ride around town on a three-wheeled bicycle, so a tricycle, not a bicycle. And we'd just sit in it and pedal away, and he and his dog Levi, we loved Levi, and Levi really loved my dad. And Dad started to fall down over the track. I remember one day I went to go pick him up. I don't remember what for, but I went to go pick him up at his apartment because my parents were separated. And I was living with my cousin Allie, I think, at the time. And Dad was just sitting in his chair waiting for me to show up on his tricycle. And he got up and his leg caught on the side of the trike and he went down. And once Dad ends up on the ground, it's really, really dangerous because he still has had problems with his neck and all this. And I panicked. I didn't get into a parking spot or nothing. I just slammed the vehicle into park and ran out to save him. There was another time he fell off his bike in the middle of the road. And luckily a police officer happened to come by and he didn't get hit. I mean, literally in the middle of the road. He had just toppled over, blood dripping from his head. I still hated him. Couldn't stand being with him, and nobody could make me madder than him. Like for instance, he wasn't. I've already said he wasn't supposed to drive, but at one point he had a truck. My mom had a truck, but he claimed the truck, and somehow, off on his own, trying to put a boat in the water, he got out, fell down, and the truck ran over his arm. His arm was covered at that point by scars. Didn't break it. Time and time again, they would give my dad only like couple of years, and a couple more years, and he kept surpassing and kept surpassing and kept surpassing, even as he got worse and worse and worse. And I thought, this man is too stubborn to die. Then, August 19th, I'm at work. I'm still working at Wendy's at the time. And unlike many days, I had actually had a good day. I wasn't in a whole lot of pain. I had managed to be there for 5 hours and was still doing okay. In fact, I was only scheduled to be there like 3.5. But we were so busy that I got extra time, and I'm feeling okay. I'm happy. I'm smiling, and just as I get off, I'm getting my employee meal. And my phone rings. And I answer. It's from my mom. And like I said, I had a good day. And I answer her. I say, "Hi, Mom. All happy and cheery." And Mom simply tells me, "You need to come home." So I'm a little worried at this point. And in my soul, I know something terrible has happened. And I go home, I walk inside, and our family friend Bonnie is there. She was there to give comfort to my mom. Now, Mom says, "Your dad has drowned." And at the time, I was having trouble with anxiety. I couldn't be physically touched. Bonnie didn't know this, and she reached out to touch me, and now I'm double panicking because I've just been told my father's dead. And I've been physically touched, and I knew she wasn't trying to upset me. And Mom tried to stop her, but and I sort of ran away, just not very far, just, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 steps, and I just began to cry. And if someone would have said your dad passed away in his sleep, or if his disease just got too bad and he couldn't take it anymore and he just passed away, or one of the many strokes, maybe a mini stroke took him. But to have him just suddenly drown. Remember how I said Dad couldn't do this. Reach out his arms out in front of him like this. Or lift his arms up like this. And remember how I said he had been tripping over his bike. Well, apparently on the 18th, late at night, Dad had gone out to go shopping at Walmart. And to get home, he crossed the train tracks and went past the ice ponds. And I don't know what he was doing so close to the water. Maybe he thought he was going to fish, or I don't know. But near the boat ramp, Dad tripped over his tricycle, and pretty much sure of this because his bike was found on its side. And because he couldn't physically hold himself up out of the water or drag himself out, Dad drowned. To this day, I've been back to the ice ponds once. And it was during a Father's Day, and I remember bawling, and I can't get myself to go back. I hated my dad. Hated him. Made me mad every day. I almost killed myself because he threatened to beat my teeth in. And I bought. Dad was a good man. He was a terrible father. But he was a very good man. And even if I hated him, I loved him so very much, and I miss him all the time. Little reminders of him. I have my piece of him. I have a picture of him right over here where he's smiling at me. I carry a picture of him in my wallet. And, one moment. I only discovered this after he passed away. This was written on June 27th, 2009. Hi, Daniel, my son. I just wanted to write a fast note to tell you I love you, and I enjoy being with you. And I want to do as much as we can this summer. I want to go camping or fishing, play the guitar, or just hang out and play your games. Don't ever forget that I love you, Dad. I'm sorry. It's getting a little hard. I knew this would be a hard video. Sorry. I'm sorry, it's been so long. Dad lived
in my mom's closet for a while. And we hadn't cremated because he'd been in the water so long. They wouldn't even show us his body because it was so bloated at the funeral home from being in the water. And all we got to see was his face. Then Dad lived in my closet for a little bit. He's now interred with his dad in Lehigh, Utah, and now his mom. If you have a dad still around, and for Father's Day, just, even if it's something small, just remind them that they're still an important part of your life and that you love them. Some people, I can understand that'll be very hard. Some people's fathers don't deserve it, but be grateful for any time that you are about to spend with them. Sorry. And don't complain. If they want to go fishing, go fishing. They want to go camping, take them camping. Let your dad be your dad. I want to say, I don't know when I'll post this, but have a happy Father's Day to any fathers out there. Happy fathers to any of your fathers. And I hope you all have a nice day.